All right, folks. So in this video, what we want to do is something unique in a way where we want to build an application which has a user interface, and behind the scene, what happens, the user would not need to know. Primarily, what we are applying as a part of that user interface is we are taking an audio file as an input from the user, so user can upload that audio file, and we are analyzing that audio file, assuming that it's some sort of a meeting took place. Maybe it's a transcript from a company annual report. Maybe it's a meeting notes you have created as a part of recording where you had a team meeting set up and whatnot as an MP4, MP3 file. And eventually you want AI to analyze that audio, and from that you want to generate certain summary, certain action items, certain sentiments of what happened within that meeting, because not everyone who is part of your team were there in the room to listen in, and they don't want to listen an entire 90-minute, 2-hour, 4-hour audio setup. Rather, they could listen just summary and they understand what everyone is going to do as a part of that meeting, who got what actions, and if there are any other things they need to do, they could look at that summary version, and from that they could figure it out. Right? So that's the function we are going to build. I will walk you through an entire set of code of right from what you do from a server point of view to all the way how you get to a user interface, which is giving you that kind of functionality. So let's get started. All right, so what you see on your screen is again one of the example what I have created. This is not the one we will use, but you get a picture that this is kind of a very simple user interface where we are asking a user to upload a WAV file. WAV file is nothing but an audio file. We can upload an MP4 file as well if you want. We can browse a file or we can drag a file and then it will do its magic. Now, I don't want to show you how to do it here, right? So maybe what we want to do is start from the very scratch. So to do this, you can do this on your MacBook, on your laptop, but to demonstrate what I want you to do, or maybe it's up to you whether you want to do it on a cloud or not, but typically on a cloud you get a faster compute. So what I want to do is I want to launch this on EC2. Amazon AWS services have EC2 as an compute, and I'm launching a new EC2 instance. I'm calling like my audio analyzer, something like that, just naming a convention here. I'm using Amazon Linux as my Linux platform as an operating system, and here you have a choice to select certain compute. I'm going to give a bit better compute. I want to use 4 vCPU and 16 GB of RAM. So I'm going to use T2 extra large because I want to process audio which are bigger files, right? And most of these things will be kept in memory and then it will be shipped over to the OpenAI, because we are going to use OpenAI models to do a lot of this work. So I'm starting off with a T2 extra large. Now in AWS, you need to have a SSH key associated with it. So I have one key pair created. So I'm going to use that, and I'm going to leave this remaining things as is, except I have an existing security group because I want to connect to that host, because we will SSH into that node, and I have created a security group. I will show you what it contains within the security group in a second, but I will choose that and I'll say, okay, launch instance. Now what it'll do, it's in a second or two. Yeah, we got an instance successfully launched, and we see it here that this is the instance. What I'm going to do is I'm click on that. I'm going to grab this public IP 5482, whatever that public IP is, right? We got that public IP, and what I will do next is I will open up my terminal. I'm going to SSH into that node, but to SSH into that node, I need that key pair. So let me make sure that I have that key pair here. PAM file is here, SSH-I, Virginia. And by default for Amazon Linux, the login user is EC2 user. So I'm using EC2 user, and remember that public IP what we got here, I'm taking that public IP and simply SSHing into that node. And this is a new machine in my known host list, so I'm going to say yes, and it's adding this particular host into a known host. So next time when I log into the host, it would not prompt me whether you trust or not, right? So this is more of a security way of thinking. We got into now into AWS EC2 host. Now there could be many things we can do, like considering this code is completely written in Python, we can create a Python virtual environment, and then we can execute all of those things what we want to do. But I'm kind of a lazy here, and I'm going to anyway terminate this instance after this work is done. So I'm going to install everything on this operating system itself, and whatever mess up it has to do, that's fine, that's okay. So with that, what we need to do is we need definitely a Python, right? So let's make sure that we have Python, and it does have Python 3.9, should be fine. Some may require 3.10 or more, but for now we can stick with that. Also we need PIP. Now I don't see PIP installed here, so what I'm going to do is, let me clear this out first. I'm going to ask my friend Google on install PIP on AWS EC2, and boom, we got the very first hit here. Install Python, pip, and ebcli on the Linux. We already got the Python, so we don't need to worry about Python, but we do need PIP. So I'm going to take this and simply paste it here. I got that file. Then what we are going to do is we just execute that py file, and we'll say okay, install it for this user. So that means it is going to install the PIP evil, and then we got the pip install. Let's make sure that we got the pip what we want. We got a pip. Okay, now that means we got the Python PIP package. It's package manager. At the end of the day, behind the scene, if we need new packages, which we will need new packages, we will use the pip to install those for us. So what packages we would need? So let me do one thing. Let me open up the code which we want to use to do this meeting minutes, right? So let me go to my favorite GitHub, and within the prompt repository, I'm hoping I have that this is meeting minutes, right? This is the, yep, this is the one we want to use. So as a part of this, and I'll put this link in the description and in the section in the comment, but these are some of the modules we are using. We are using Streamlit, we are using OpenAI, we are using docx, pydub. So we need to install this modules into this host. So what I'm going to do is I will start with OpenAI, and it's installing. The reason we are doing is because we want to use OpenAI's GPT models like GPT 3.5 or 4 or whatnot to do certain things for us. What we will, I'll show you, walk through the code. The next thing we want is a Streamlit. So why Streamlit? Streamlit is nothing but a user interface. So this is a Streamlit interface, what you see here, right? And again, it's toy example, it's not secure. I'm using on port 8080 or whatnot, but that's fine for an education purpose, for an academic purpose. It's okay to have this way, but not for an enterprise setup. And in an enterprise setup, you would rather want to use some fancy UI using JavaScript and whatnot, right? So let's go back to this. The Streamlit is installed here. There were few other things we wanted to install, right? So here we see docx. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to install pip install python docx. You may wonder why I'm looking for a docx. I'll show you why. and I also need a pydub. So I'll say pip install pydub. Okay, so I got my prerequisite setup here. Now what I need to do is let me go through the code. I need this code. I need to execute this code. So what I'm gonna do is, I can do a git clone of an entire repo, but these are like more the 200 line of a code. I'm gonna just simply copy it, and I'll go back to my terminal here. I'll say, okay, vi, let's call it meeting minutes.py file, and I'm gonna insert entire 158 lines all together. We got it. It's here. I don't see any major significance issues. Yep, it's all good from a formatting point of view. I'm gonna save it. I'll just view it one more time. Seems okay. Yes, I got my prompts, I got my functions, and all the good things. So no, I cannot edit it because I'm viewing it. So we got the code here. Now what we need to do, let me walk you through the code first, and then before that let me execute the code. And it will fail at first instance, but I want it to fail so that you would learn why it's failing. To run the Streamlit code, I'll need to start with Streamlit. So let's make sure Streamlit is there. It's working. Okay, it's working. And clear it out. Streamlit run meeting minutes.py. Right? It's as simple as this, and that will launch the Streamlit web server and on a certain port, and that will give us a link if all things work correct. All right, so we got a link, and remember these are the internal IPs 172.31, but 54.82 are the external IPs. So I'm simply taking this 8501 is the port. That's fine. Hopefully that should work. So I'll go back to my browser and I will execute this. And we got an error, the very first error. We are missing OpenAI API key environment variable. So let me walk you through the code first and then show you why this is happening, what is happening here. So what we are doing as a part of this overall functionality is, as you saw in the earlier screen, where we are uploading a file and then we are analyzing whatever that audio file was, right? So as a part of that code, let me go back to the GitHub here. What we are doing is we are interacting with OpenAI. OpenAI being OpenAI APIs, right? So what I'm going to do is I need to have an OpenAI API key. So I will go to the OpenAI. Okay, so now I have the API key. I'm gonna copy this, and what I will do is I will go back to my server. Here I need to create an environment variable. What do I mean by an environment variable? I'm in the home directory. I have something called a bash profile file. I'm going to edit this, and what we will do is we will export, and remember the term has to be very specific. So we'll go back to the code. We'll make sure that what we are using is being used. So OpenAI underscore API underscore key, that should be the variable name. So OpenAI underscore API underscore key, and we'll go back to our OpenAI where we have the key. It only given out you to once, so you must copy it first, store it somewhere on a notepad or somewhere if you want to reuse that again. I'm gonna discard this once we are done with this exercise, so that's the reason I'm exposing my API keys to all of you. But let me store this, or at least add this here. Now I got this here as my bash profile. what I need to do is either I can do a log out and log back in to the server so that my environment variable is updated, or alternatively I can source that file and that will bring me the environment variable, right? So if I do an env and if I do env grep open, oh sorry, I must use grep. There we go. We got OpenAI underscore API key with a value of whatever we set here, right? So now if I go back to my Streamlit, I'm doing a Streamlit run meeting minutes.py. Hopefully this should be good to go. So we go to the same server. Here we go. Let me refresh it. Boom, we got this up and running. Remember, this is the 5482.230.139 which we just created few minutes ago. 5482.231.39, that's the IP address of what we got. So these things are at least functional, similar to what we see here in the other server. Now here it's 8080, this one is functioning on 8501. So what you may need to do, maybe, if you cannot get to this stage, you could be running into some AWS security challenges. What do I mean by security challenges? Is for each instance by default, the security group does not allow that particular port, whatever we get to, like 8501 or 8080, those ports are never opened for anybody. So when you go to that instance, go to the security group. In this case, I used a particular security group which I have pre-created called SSH only, which does have access to the SSH port, but I also have created some custom additional port as well. Like I can have access to certain TCP port like 80, 8501 along with 20, 8080 and so forth, right? And I have restricted that not everything I would be able to access from everywhere. Rather, certain IP addresses are allowed to access it. So you need to go through some security if in case you run into some issues for the inbound rules, right? So I have that covered and I got this at this stage now. Now all I want to do is I want to upload a file, and as a part of that upload file, I have one file called engineering1.wav file. It's about 179 MB file, and I'll tell you what this file is. So we, as a part of my AI for Engineers course, we ran a day one, and in that day one we had about 90 minutes of recording, and I brought in that 90 minutes of recording. That is what we see here as a WAV file, and I'm uploading that WAV file, and now it started its magic. So what it's doing, it's uploading that file, and now let's go through that code again, right? Now you need to understand what I'm doing. So as a part of that, we got the OpenAI API key created, and then we got it into our environment variable. Then what I'm doing is I'm sort of setting the maximum file upload size for Streamlit. Streamlit has a limitation in terms of 25 or 50 meg is something they allow. I want it to be up to 1 gig. So this is kind of a configuration setting. But when we look at what happens, the actual code is, I'm gonna get all the way down first. Is in the actual code, these are the things happens. What you see in the earlier section is all the functions. But this is the title of meeting minutes generator, right? That is the title we see here, meeting minute generator. And then it's taking an uploaded file uploader here. So upload a WAV file. And if it is not uploaded, some harness I have created that now it's transcribing the audio. Now it's generating the meeting minutes so that whoever is the user, they get to see what this is. So now it's transcribing the audio. Now it will continue. Now at the end of the day, all it's doing is after it creates the meeting minutes, which is what it's doing. First is transcribing the audio. It's calling the transcribe audio function. We'll take a look at what that function is. And then it's calling meeting minutes. We'll look at what that function is. And the output what we get is finally we feed into a docx because we want this as a Word document. So that's the reason I'm creating this as a Word document. And then finally we get a meeting minute.docx file, which we should be able to download. So let's go through each of these functions of what they are doing. And as a part of that, let's start with the transcribe part. So transcribe part is taking that audio, whatever we provided here, it's still transcribing. It will create the chunks. Why it's creating chunks, or why we are creating chunks here, is because the model, we are using what we call Whisper model. It's also an OpenAI model. All it's doing is converting speech into text. And it cannot take a long input, like we are talking about 179 megabyte of a file. It cannot take that large file as an input. That means we need to chunk it. Remember that file size was 179 megabyte when we uploaded. Probably I don't have it here, but yeah, 179 megabyte when we uploaded. Maybe it's showing up here. Yeah, 179.7 MB. Yep. So it cannot take it as a single file. So we are providing in a chunk. So we are providing 5 minute worth of, 10 minute worth of, whatever that chunk is, audio to that model. And that model is giving us a text output back. So it's a speech to text. And what we are doing after that, once we get each individual speech to text conversion, we are joining all the text together. And what we get is a full transcription. Once we have that full transcription, what we are doing is we are sort of creating few functions. I mean, this major function called meeting minutes. As a meeting minutes, we are invoking some of the sub function like abstract summary, key point, action items, and sentiment analysis. Let's look at each of this function. Here we are telling this function is go and invoke a model GPT-4o, and as a part of that we are giving a system prompt. So this is the key part of what we are doing, is we are telling GPT-4o who that model is. So we are kind of setting the stage that you are a highly skilled AI trained in language comprehension and summarization, and I want you to read the following text and paragraph and provide the coherent readable summary and then dari, right? So this is an entire system prompt. We are forcing, it's kind of a forcing function to the model that you are only doing that role. You are not doing more, you are not doing less. And then what we are feeding as a user prompt is our transcription, right? Whatever that text got created. So that is the very first thing. We get a summary from that entire transcription. The second thing we want is the key points. What were discussed during, what were the key points discussed? And as a part of that, we are creating another system prompt that you are a proficient AI with specialty in distilling the information, right? That's where key point extraction would come in. And we are specifically saying that you are distilling information into key points. And based on the text, identify and list the main point that were discussed or brought up. And this should be the most important idea as finding or the topic what you found. So kind of a system prompt we created. Here we are giving a specific role, a different role than the first one. And we are still using the same transcript, right? No change there. The next we are doing is action item. So in the meeting, what action items were discussed? Can you help us understand? And that's where we are telling this model, again the system prompt, that you are an AI expert in analyzing this conversation, whatever was discussed, and extracting the action items. So again, the prompt has changed. The system prompt has changed. The user prompt will still remain the same. And there are a few other aspects of please review the text and then ideate and then come up with a task assignment and then many more things, right? But input, user input, still the same. And last but not least, identifying sentiments within the meetings. Where people were enthusiastic, people were sad, what was the actual happening during the meeting? That might give us an idea of what actually happened. So again, we are feeding that system prompt saying that you are an AI expert with language and emotion analysis. So like if you understand human emotions, and based on that, your task is to analyze the sentiment, whether it's positive, negative, neutral, and all the good things from the entire transcription. And finally, save this as a document file, and we get the minute generated. So let's see where we are. Oh, we got these things created. Let me zoom in a bit. All right, so meeting minutes, we got an abstract summary. So what it's saying is discussion primarily revolved around the intricacies of AI, particularly focusing on the training and evaluation of a model like GPT-4, Llama, Dari. Remember, this entire wave file what I throw into this one is the recording of one of my course, AI for Engineers, and I gave away that entire 90 minutes of recording to this model or to the system. And since we were talking about it's the very first session where we talk about the fundamentals of AI, the open source, the closed source, and then all the good things, and it captured it very thoroughly of what this is. And also it's talk about the practical applications of AI which we go through of how in real life generative AI is used. And then it's talking about the key points of what key points were discussed as a part of this entire process. So we talk about the generative AI, the math functionality, the machine learning aspect of it, the RLHF, and all the good things. We talk about the RAG, the fine tuning, systematic thinking. So there are like, 80 different action or points it identified from that audio. And what are the action items? I had an action item that I need to do hands-on tomorrow or the next day. So that was for me. And I need to provide some platform credits for them to use it. Whether we use AWS, we use GPU, whether we get feedback, I ask them the feedback of how the session was. And all of those things we addressed. And finally, the sentiment. The sentiment is saying informative and technical language, lack of emotional language. There is an absence of strong emotional language or subjective opinion. So that means it's not positive, it's not negative, it's neutral, and it was set in a professional context. And finally, we can download this as a docx. And it's saying, okay, meeting minutes, but the Chrome is a bit security savvy. It's saying insecure download blocked because I'm not on a HTTPS, it's HTTP. I don't have an SSL certificate installed. Chrome is blocking that. I'm going to say, okay, keep it. I know from where this file came in. And let's see, show it in a Finder. So this is the file which we just got created. Yeah, just now. Not yet. It should be in the downloads, not here. Yeah, here we go. This got created just now. Let's make sure. Yep, 156, 157, that's fine. Just right now, a few minutes ago, or a minute ago now. And we got an abstraction summary, what we just see it in the screen. We got the key point, we got the action items, we got the sentiment, and all the things what we saw it on where here, right? Yeah. We got this. Now I can stop this because we got this all these things working. If I go back to my server, it's still running. That server is running, whatever the Streamlit I started until I stop it. So if I stop it, Control C, that is stopping it, and then it would not work, right? So this is an entire step-by-step process of how would you start from literally nothing to getting the code out there, installing all the dependencies what you need to execute that code. You execute that code finally, you see the output, you see the result, and exactly what you were looking for, you get that as your final outcome. But the key point is the result wouldn't have been possible if we were not getting to the system prompt. If we don't design that system prompt, the result what we may see is a different. So the key methodology or key functions or key takeaway for you is not only the code or running as a Streamlit, but also think about how you design those system prompts. All right, so with that, I hope this was helpful to you in terms of understanding the Python, understanding the OpenAI models, understanding the systems and user prompt, and a few other things along the way. If you liked it, great. Put a comment, ask a question, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.